Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, depending on where you are in this world. Wherever you are, I hope you had a blessed day. I hope God has directed all your paths and helped with all your decisions, and that everything was a blessing today. And if not, keep looking up. He's not that far away. He's at the door. Today we're going to continue in the Complete Apocrypha, and we are in the book of Jasher, and today I'm going to read chapters 75 and 76. At that time, in the 180th year of the Israelites going down into Egypt, there went out from Egypt valiant men, 30,000 on foot, from the children of Israel, who were all of the tribe of Joseph, of the children of Ephraim, the son of Joseph. For they said, the period was completed which the Lord had appointed to the children of Israel in the times of old, which he had spoken to Abraham. And these men girded themselves, and they put each man his sword at his side, and every man his armor upon him. And they trusted to their strength, and they went out together from Egypt with a mighty hand. But they brought no provision for the road, only silver and gold. Not even bread for that day did they bring in their hands, for they thought of getting their provision for pay from the Philistines, and if not, they would take it by force. And these men were very mighty and valiant men. One man could pursue 1,000, and two could rout 10,000. So they trusted in their strength, and they went together as they were, and they directed their course toward the land of Gath. And they went down and found the shepherds of Gath, feeding the cattle of the children of Gath. And they said to the shepherds, Give us some of the sheep for pay, that we may eat, for we are hungry, for we have eaten no bread this day. And the shepherds said, Are they our sheep or cattle, that we should give them to you even for pay? So the children of Ephraim approached to take them by force. And the shepherds of Gath shouted over them, that their cry was heard at a distance. So all the children of Gath went out to them. And when the children of Gath saw the evil doings of the children of Ephraim, they returned and assembled the men of Gath. And they put on each man his armor, and came out to the children of Ephraim for battle. And they engaged with them in the valley of Gath, and the battle was severe. And they smote from each other a great many on that day. And on the second day the children of Gath sent to all the cities of the Philistines that they should come to their help, saying, Come up to us and help us, that we may smite the children of Ephraim, who have come out from Egypt to take our cattle, and to fight against us without cause. Now the souls of the children of Ephraim were exhausted with hunger and thirst, for they had eaten no bread for 3 days. And 40,000 men went out from the cities of the Philistines to the assistance of the men of Gath. And these men were engaged in battle with the children of Ephraim. And the Lord delivered the children of Ephraim into the hands of the Philistines. And they smote all the children of Ephraim, all who had gone out from Egypt. None were remaining, but 10 men who had run away from the engagement. For this evil was from the Lord against the children of Ephraim. For they transgressed the word of the Lord in going out from Egypt, before the period had arrived which the Lord in the days of old had appointed to Israel. And of the Philistines also there fell a great many, about 20,000 men. And their brethren carried them and buried them in their cities. And the slain of the children of Ephraim remained forsaken in the valley of Gath for many days and years, and were not brought to burial. And the valley was filled with men's bones. And the men who had escaped from the battle came to Egypt, and told all the children of Israel all that had befallen them. And their father Ephraim mourned over them for many days. And his brethren came to console him. And he came unto his wife, and she bore a son. And she called his name Beriah, for she was unfortunate in his house. And this is chapter 76. And Moses the son of Amram was still king in the land of Cush in those days, and he prospered in his kingdom. And he conducted the government of the children of Cush in justice, in righteousness, and in integrity. And all the children of Cush loved Moses all the days that he reigned over them. And all the inhabitants of the land of Cush were greatly afraid of him. And in the 40th year of the reign of Moses over Cush, Moses was sitting on the royal throne, while Adoniah the queen was before him, and all the nobles were sitting around him. And Adoniah the queen said before the king and the princes, "What is this thing which you, the children of Cush, have done for this long time? Surely you know that for 40 years that this man has reigned over Cush. He has not approached me, nor has he served the gods of the children of Cush. Now therefore hear, O you children of Cush, and let this man no more reign over you, as he is not our flesh." Excuse me. Sorry, I had to get some water. Verse 6. Now therefore hear, O you children of Cush, and let this man no more reign over you, as he is not our flesh. Behold, Menacrus, my son, is grown up. Let him reign over you. For it is better for you to serve the son of your Lord than to serve a stranger, slave of the king of Egypt. And all the people and nobles of the children of Cush heard the words which Adoniah the queen had spoken in their ears. And all the people were preparing until the evening. And in the morning they rose up early and made Menacrus, son of Kilcanus, king over them. And all the children of Cush were afraid to stretch out their hand against Moses, for the Lord was with Moses. And the children of Cush remembered the oath which they swore unto Moses. Therefore they did no harm to him. But the children of Cush gave many presents to Moses, and sent him from them with great honor. So Moses went out from the land of Cush, and went home, and ceased to reign over Cush. And Moses was 66 years old when he went out of the land of Cush, for the thing was from the Lord. For the period had arrived which he had appointed in the days of old, to bring out Israel from the affliction of the children of Ham. So Moses went to Midian, for he was afraid to return to Egypt on account of Pharaoh. And he went and sat at a well of water in Midian. And the 7 daughters of Reuel the Midianite went out to feed their father's flock. And they came to the well and drew water to water their father's flock. So the shepherds of Midian came and drove them away. And Moses rose up and helped them and watered the flock. And they came home to their father Reuel, and told him what Moses did for them. And they said, "An Egyptian man has delivered us from the hands of the shepherds. He drew up water for us and watered the flock." And Reuel said to his daughters, "And where is he? Why have you left the man?" And Reuel sent for him, and fetched him, and brought him home. And he ate bread with him. And Moses related to Reuel that he had fled from Egypt, and that he reigned 40 years over Cush, and that they afterward had taken the government from him, and had sent him away in peace with honor and with presents. Excuse me again. And when Reuel had heard the word of Moses, Reuel said within himself, "I will put this man into the prison house, whereby I will conciliate the children of Cush, for he has fled from them." And they took him and put him into the prison house, and Moses was in prison 10 days. And while Moses was in prison house, Zipporah, the daughter of Reuel, took pity over him, and supported him with bread and water all the time. And all the children of Israel were yet in the land of Egypt, serving the Egyptians in all manner of hard work. And the hand of Egypt continued in severity over the children of Israel in those days. And at that time the Lord smote Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and he afflicted him with the plague of leprosy, from the sole of his foot to the crown of his head. Owing to the cruel treatment of the children of Israel was this plague at that time from the Lord upon the king of Egypt. For the Lord had hearkened to the prayer of his people, the children of Israel, and their cry reached him on account of their hard work. Still his anger did not turn from them, and the hand of Pharaoh was still stretched out against the children of Israel. And Pharaoh hardened his neck before the Lord, And he increased his yoke over the children of Israel, and embittered their lives with all manner of hard work. And when the Lord had inflicted the plague upon Pharaoh, king of Egypt, he asked his wise men and sorcerers to cure him. And his wise men and sorcerers said unto him, that if the blood of little children were put into the wounds, he would be healed. And Pharaoh hearkened to them, and sent his ministers to Goshen, to the children of Israel, to take their little children. And Pharaoh's ministers went and took the infants of the children of Israel from the bosoms of their mothers by force, and they brought them to Pharaoh daily, a child each day. And the physicians killed them and applied them to the plague. Thus did they all the days. And the number of the children which Pharaoh slew were 375. But the Lord hearkened not to the physicians of the king of Egypt, and the plague went on increasing mightily. And Pharaoh was 10 years afflicted with that plague. Still the heart of Pharaoh was more hardened against the children of Israel. And at the end of the 10 years the Lord continued to afflict Pharaoh with destructive plagues. And the Lord smote him with a bad tumor and sickness at the stomach, and his plague turned to a severe boil. At that time 2 ministers of Pharaoh came from the land of Goshen, where all the children of Israel were, and went to the house of Pharaoh and said to him, We have seen the children of Israel slacken in their work, and negligent in their labor. And when Pharaoh heard the words of his ministers, his anger was kindled against the children of Israel exceedingly, for he was greatly grieved at his bodily pain. And he answered and said, Now that the children of Israel know that I am ill, they turn and scoff at us. Now therefore harness my chariot for me, and I will go myself to Goshen, and will see the scoff of the children of Israel, which they are deriding me. So his servants harnessed the chariot for him, and they took and made him ride upon a horse, and he was not able to ride of himself. And he took with him 10 horsemen and 10 footmen, and he went to the children of Israel to Goshen. And when they had come to the border of Egypt, the king's horse passed into a narrow place, elevated in the hollow part of the vineyard, fenced on both sides, the low plain country being on the other side. And the horses ran rapidly in that place, and pressed each other, and the horses pressed the king's horse. And the king's horse fell into the low plain, while the king was riding upon it. And when he fell, the chariot turned over the king's face, and the horse lay upon the king. And the king cried out, for his flesh was very sore. And the flesh of the king was torn from him, and his bones were broken, and he could not ride. For this thing was from the Lord to him. For the Lord had hearkened to the cries of his people, the children of Israel, in their affliction. And his servants carried him upon their shoulders, a little at a time, and they brought him back to Egypt. And the horsemen who were with him came also back to Egypt. And they placed him in his bed, and the king knew that his end was come to die. And Aparanith, the queen, his wife, came and cried before the king, and the king wept a great weeping with her. And all his nobles and servants came on that day, and saw the king in that affliction, and wept a great weeping with him. And the princes of the king and all his counselors advised the king to cause one to reign in his stead in the land, whomsoever he should choose from his sons. And the king had 3 sons and 2 daughters, which Aparanith, the queen, his wife, had borne to him, besides the king's children of the concubines. And these were their names: the firstborn, Orith, Thera, the second, Adikam, and the third, Morion, and their sisters, the name of the elder Bathia, and the other Akuzi. And Orthia, the firstborn of the king, was an idiot, precipitate, and hurried in his words. But Adikam was a cunning and wise man, knowing all in all wisdom of Egypt, but of unseemly aspect, thick in flesh, and very short in stature. His height was 1 cubit. And when the king saw Adikam, his son, intelligent and wise in all things. The king resolved that he should be king in his stead after his death, and he took for him a wife, Gedudua, daughter of Abielot, and he was 10 years old. And she bore unto him 4 sons. And he afterward went and took 3 wives, and begot 8 sons and 3 daughters. And the disorder greatly prevailed over the king, and his flesh stank like the flesh of a carcass cast upon the field in summertime, during the heat of the sun. And when the king saw that his sickness had greatly strengthened itself over him, he ordered his son Adikam to be brought to him. And they made him king over the land in his place. And at the end of 3 years the king died in shame, disgrace, and disgust. And his servants carried him and buried him in the sepulchre of the kings of Egypt in Zoan Mizraim. But they embalmed him not, as was usual with kings, for his flesh was putrid. And they could not approach him to embalm him on account of the stench. So they buried him in haste. For this evil was from the Lord to him. For the Lord had paid him back evil for evil, which in his days he had done to Israel. And he died with terror and with shame, and his son Adikam reigned in his place. The Lord is not slack. He's not slack in his judgment. He's not slack in his provision. And he is never slack in his love. And as always, I love you.